So what I'd like to do today is cover installing SNMP on our FreeBSD server. SNMP stands for Simple Network Management Protocol. It's a way to get information about the health of your server. It's got a lot of features in it. I'm going to be using this silverwraith.com papers FreeBSD-SNMP.php here. I'll try to remember to put a link in the video description for you guys. But basically, we're going to only be using the first half of this paper. It's pretty straightforward because we actually use Observium, which is a pretty nice open source product that gives you the ability to connect to your servers via SNMP and use RRD to save historical information from everything from interface utilization to memory to processor. It gives you a lot of detail on disk space, swap space, and some events that have occurred on the server. I'm showing it here for our current mail server, or one of our mail servers, which is a Linux-based server. And as you can see, we've already added Diablito into that. There's not much information there, but if we drill into, let's say our SNMP server, well, let's go into post office. That one's got usually good graphs. As you can see, we've got memory utilization. You can click into it, drill down, and I'm not sure why that shows no auth. Normally it shows all the information. Probably have to refresh here. There we go. As you can see, it shows you hourly all the way out to 2 years what's been going on with the server. In fact, I can tell the server looks like it needs to get a reboot because it's going into crash mode here. But anyway, that's besides the point. So you can get a list of all your devices, and when you go to the home page, if you've got a lot of devices going on all over the place, it's got a nice mapping feature where it'll map what devices are where and what's on and what's off and all that kind of stuff. So pretty good tool. So we're going to hook it up to this SNMP tool. We're going to install it on the FreeBSD server, and then we're going to use Observium to monitor that server through the FreeBSD software. As usual, there's always the FreeBSD handbook, but I'm not sure why I can't find anything on the SNMP module here, even though it's part of the standard packages that are deployed. If anybody knows why that is, give me a shout out, let me know. As usual, we're going to have to put a pinhole into our firewall in order for our monitoring server to be able to communicate with our current server that we're going to install this in. And again, I was just doing some research on this before I did it, and there's a really good manual page. You can always go to the man page for SNMP and get all the details on it. This seems a little not as verbose as it should be, but again, pretty standard tool. I think it's used quite widely for system monitoring. If you don't know what SNMP is, go learn about it if you're a sysadmin. It's really a great tool. So here we go. I've already installed this on one of our servers, but we're going to install it on our secondary server, and we're going to add that. Obviously, the first thing I need to do is I need to go and become super user, so I don't have to constantly be putting this to adding sudo command in front of everything I do. So sudo su, I put in my password that I can't remember. There we go. So now I'm root. And the first thing I like to do is make sure that my Pkg, or package management software, is up to date. I think that's always a good practice before you install anything. You want to make sure it's a way to verify that everything's up to date and any security patches or holes that are done are in place. Looks good. Pkg Upgrade. Up. Can't type on a Monday morning. Pkg Upgrade. There we go. So the first thing we need to do is update our Pkg, which is fine. We do that. Boom. Now it says, hey, you've got these packages that are out of date. Let's get those guys up to date. The nice thing about this is we don't really have any kernel packages, so none of these things really aren't going to require a reboot. So once we get them installed, we can get this process kicked off. Now, to start, let's just do a search Pkg, and we're going to do SNMPD. I suppose you could just do SNMP. Oops. There we go. And there's a bunch of packages, and all these packages do all different things, but the one that we're really looking for is this guy, Extendable SNMP Implementation. So I'm just going to cheat and do a copy and then say install net SNMP 5.7.3_11. Sounds good to me. It asks me, are you sure you want to install this? Yes. Move forward. We download, we install. And this is, again, something I really love about the FreeBSD implementation. It's really well done in a lot of ways. It actually gives you the set of commands that you need to add to your EDC conf to get this all going. And these descriptions actually come out, especially when you do like upgrades. If there's something that changes with the system, it gives you a text output at the end of the install of what you need to be aware of, so that you don't really have to remember a lot of this stuff. It kind of, it's as a friend of mine always reminds me, it's ragu. It's in there. So we're going to go ahead and copy this section. And you can obviously change the default implementations of it. I like it just the way it is. Now I'm going to rc.conf. I'm going to edit this file, and as you can see, I've already got some of the pieces in place. I've got the firewall configuration PF enabled. We've got SSHD enabled up here. So I'm simply going to create a comment and call this SNMP configuration. And I'm simply going to paste this. Now it puts a little tabby thing in front, no problem. We'll just fix that. Right, quit. We're done. So that's the configuration. It did give us some environmental variables that we could set in case we wanted to do when we're doing the configuration for this thing, but I don't really do that. I just go ahead and manually enter all that stuff. It's not a very difficult thing to do. So let's do that. Now, the nice thing is SNMP comes with this configuration tool here. So you just type snmpconf space -i, hit enter, and you go into this SNMP configuration. And it tells you what do you want to configure. You want snmp.conf, snmpd.conf, snmptrapd.conf. In this case, we're just going to be configuring snmp.conf. So hit enter. Now we need to set up some default authentication options, some debugging output options, textual MIP parsing, and output style options. The only thing you really need to deal with in this menu is number 1. Okay. And it takes you into the default. Oh, I went into the wrong one. Sorry. Type finish to back out. The one that we need to go into, actually I went all the way, okay, finished. I want to go into number 3, which is the snmpd.conf, and I want to, from here, change number 1, the access control setup. So we got to create some access control for our external device to be able to communicate with this. So we hit 1. Now, this is where you kind of want to, based on your setup, you're going to do this differently. In our case, we want to use, at minimum, SNMP v2c, and we're going to only create a read-only community string. If you don't understand what I just said, just go Google SNMP and do a little bit of reading on what community strings are, what the difference between the different implementations of v1, v2c, and v3 are. Those are just v1, v2c, v2c, and v3 are just different authentication levels. v3 being the It's got a user ID and password and all kinds of stuff to it. v2c uses a community string as the authentication, and v1 basically there's no authentication. So if you're ever going to be using something that's going to be working on the outside, you definitely at minimum want to use v2c. You definitely don't want to use v1 when you have other servers communicating to your server internally. So in this case, we really want to set up number 3, which is a read-only, and it'll be a v2c community string for access. And basically now it's telling us, okay, so what is the read-only access community name? And the community name, and I'm going to change this later, I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes now. Let's just call it password, or let's call it, some of the default implementations, it'll be like public, community, or something like that. Community, yeah. This is not a good string to use because public is usually the default string, and when systems are working, they'll put that in there. And then the host name or network address accepted for this community name, just hit return for all. I would seriously recommend putting in the actual IP address of the host. In our case, we're going to be using 12.238.189.113, and that's a /32. Hit enter. And the OIDs of the community that you want to restrict. And OIDs are basically, there's a, SNMP is developed in a tree format. So it's telling you what is the highest level along that tree that you want to allow the access to this community string, and you can basically give it a node on the tree that it'll only access stuff past that node. In this case, because I want to get all the information from my server, I'm just going to restrict it to none. So we did that. So we're going to, in this case, you can do list, and now it lists for you here. This is a read-only community public string for and then what we want to do is say, okay, let's finish this part. And now the only other part that you're really going to want to do is you're going to want to do 5, which is the system information. So number 1, location of this system. In this case, it's going to be ISI Los Angeles. Your contact information. So this is going to be tech support at inksystems.com. And number 3, the proper value for the sys services object. I'm going to actually walk you through this. So does this host offer physical services like a repeater? 0. No. Does this host offer data link subnetwork services like a bridge? No. Does this host offer internet services? Like, is this a gateway? In our case, no. Does this host offer end-to-end services, such as TCP/IP? I guess this is more like what, routers? No. And does this host offer application services like SMTP? Well, we know it does. In this case, this is going to actually be an IMAP server. So 1. Again, you can list to see what this information now has been set to. If you're finished and you like what you see, type finished, if you can type. And then from there, really, to set this up, we don't need much other information. You can go in here and extensively configure this, but we've done the minimum amount that we need to do to configure it. So from here, again, we type finished. And we're not going. We can configure SNMP stuff. We really aren't going to. We can also configure SNMP trap stuff. We aren't really going to. We just want to set up the daemon so that we can communicate to the daemon and get system information from it. So in this case, we type 3. In this case, we type quit, and it tells us that it took and it wrote these 2 files. Now notice the location of these 2 files. These 2 files are in user local share SNMP. What we need to do is we need to actually copy these files, and again I'm going to cheat with my Control-C, Control-V, snmpd.conf, and we're going to drop this into etc, and we're going to do the same thing with the smp conf file. Now let's take a look at those 2 files and see what we have. snmpd.conf, look into it. As you can see, we went through a lot of rigmarole through the SNMP conf tool to basically create this information. And you can manually obviously come into this file and put these 3 pieces of information into it, and that might be a lot simpler in this case. The reason I did it the other way was because I wanted to show you that tool, that if the configuration stuff, sometimes it's easier to go through that command line interface and follow the step by step, and it can give you, it's got a more natural language than going in here and remembering all of these configuration commands. Obviously, this is easy to do in case of what we're doing. And in fact, if we look at smp.conf, you'll notice that there's really nothing in here. I mean, this file is empty for all intended purposes. So we could just leave it at that. Now, so we've got that set up. So let's take a look at how we would start it. Service, Simple Network Management Protocol daemon, SNMPD Start. Let's see what happens. Oh, it started. Let's look at the status. No, status, it's running. Wonderful. Now, we still can't add this server because if we try to add this, what's going to happen is it's going to say, hey, I can't communicate with this server. Why? Well, because we've got firewall going on. So let's take a look at our firewall. Let's take a look at our firewall and see what's going on. Well, we've got these pass-ins going on here. These are all HTTP, HTTPS, and SSH. This server right now has a minimal configuration, but in fact, I'm going to go here and I'm going to cheat a little bit because I have this already configured here, and I don't want to have to do it again, but I'll explain what this all says. So we're going to pass in quick. In other words, if this was established, pass in quick, meaning once you hit this line, and if it validates this line, don't move on to any other rule. On our external interface, which is this guy over here, inet proto is UDP. SNMP happens in UDP. From, that's our host that we're going to be connecting to external interface port SNMP. Okay, let's exit out of here. So now we're going to use our PF. We're going to use our PF control command to simply reload and reflush the system. And then we're going to list our rules. And as you can see now, we have a rule in here. Where is that rule? There we go. We have this rule here that says from this host to us, port equal to SNMP. So if we scroll up here, and I'm just going to copy and paste this, and again, I'm going to change this later once I'm done with this video, and we go to Observium, we say device, we're going to add a device, and this guy's name is Claudio. We're going to use that public screen V2C on port 161, add device. Could not resolve this host. The reason it can't resolve it is because Claudio is not yet in my DNS. So what I'm going to do is give it the IP address instead. Click add device. Could not resolve host name. Okay, let's try Claudio.linksystems.com. Okay. So it's not letting me add this device because Claudio is not part of my DNS yet. But that's not a problem because we're going to go ahead and fix that problem. It'll make our video a little bit longer, but that's okay. So let's go ahead and let's SSH into this guy, who happens to be my DNS server. And we're going to vim, well, let's go sudo su, and we're going to vim var named chroot var named inksystems.com.db. Now the reason this is this way is because our name server is running a chroot. I'm not convinced 100% that that's really necessary anymore. It's just something that we used to do from a long time ago. So let's go in here and let's change this to 16 January 1st 11.11 version 1, and let's go, I know Diablito is in here somewhere. Okay, alright, let's see, where is Diablito? There's Diablito up here, and let's just append, and we'll add Cordio as an A record, 12.238.189. What did we say, 47, I believe is the IP address. 27. Oh, so Cordio actually needs to go into the DMZ, and we can put him down here. Right, quit. Now this is a Linux server, so the way we start the oh, this is an old Linux server, so at the named restart, boom, it's done. So now, even though I haven't updated our let's just call it that. And let's see if we can add the device. There you go. Device has been added. So now we go to our device list, all devices, and as you can see, Cordio has been added here. The reason it doesn't have any information on it yet is because it hasn't parsed it, but here on Diablito you can see that we just added that this morning, and we've already got some input-output information. We've got some memory usage. There is a little bit of a process usage here, but it's not showing. Once this device gets pulled by the Observium server, it will now also show that it'll eventually get the information on what it is, where it is, platform, operating system, uptime, and all that stuff. As you can see, it's been up for 22 days, 21 hours. Our Diablito and Cordio, it'll eventually get that information. So it's that simple. That's SNMP on FreeBSD. I hope you enjoyed this video, and we will